Hello and welcome back to Redemption Radio Week 4 recap. We are live and ready to go. By we, I mean myself, Human Bones, and of course, Hate Daddy and Stal. How are you guys doing?
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. We had another really interesting, fun week and the end of the very first regular season of Redemption CTF. Um, so I think first we should just go down the standings before we get a chance to jump into some of the games here. Um, So after 4 weeks, we've got the fifth and sixth team in the seedings were eliminated. So it's the top four going head to head for a chance in the finals this week. So, uh, excuse me, I might not be able to talk for some of it. So my throat's acting weird. So just sorry. But first seed is FU, Frag Yourself. Second seed is NLG, No Lux Given. Third is DNB. Fourth, TWT. So to me, the biggest surprise, I'm not sure that I would say it's the biggest surprise per se, but the way that things looked, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, was that TWT was not making the playoffs. So to me, I think that's, a huge accomplishment for them to bounce back after losing their first two games and to put themselves into the fourth seed. And of course, if you look at VBM, right? So the two teams that were eliminated, VBM, Very Bad Mothers, and ORB, Oil Rigger Boys, two really strong teams, I think, on paper. Never quite able to gel throughout the regular season. So the surprising part to me, I think, is that VBM did not make it. And if you look, like I know we're talking about capture the flag, all that stuff, but if you look at this frag differential, I mean, even their captures are pretty high up there. They're not that far. Like there's not a lot of captures total captures separating, seeds 1 through 5 in general. But then you look at the frags, and I mean the next closest team is a little under 200 frags away from VBM. I mean they were just pretty much annihilating all of their opponents frag wise, and they were scoring the captures. But then if you look at the flags leaked, highest number, tied for the highest number of flags leaked. So, I mean, what kind of a story does that tell for their season, but then the season of the rest of the teams overall?
So, one of the distinctions that I would make right away, looking at just flat numbers without putting the perspective of ratios and averages, is that you should know that VBM, just off the top of my head, VBM played more rounds than anybody else. I think DMB might have played just as many. But aside from week one, VBM was in. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they played. Yeah. Even still, they played more rounds than anybody because they had that 4 round against DMB.
They're
So that's
actually
one
tied
of
in
the.
rounds at 11.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought it sounded pretty close. So those are the two teams with the most rounds. So yeah, without a doubt, they were a fragging powerhouse, and I'm sure that they were probably one of the best overall fragging teams. And obviously, the biggest stat that jumps out of you is how many flags that they gave up. Typically, you don't see Ninja Dog laden teams give up that many points, but here we are. I guess where I stand with VBM is I just don't think this was a team that ever really got going. Week one, they had a good performance against ORB, but as it turns out, ORB wasn't that good. And they struggled against ORB in the first round too. Like let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't like they just walked all over ORB. And then round two they kind of had their way, but then in week two, I mean, granted they were relatively close games against FU, especially the second round. They weren't. If you watched that game, if you didn't look at just the score, but if you watched that game, FU was in control of that game. It never felt like VBM was really threatening to win that game. Then you go to week three against DMB, where they have an epic 4-round game. DMB's right in the middle of the pack. They're not a great team, but they're not a bad team. And on their good days, they can beat anybody, but on their bad days, they can look pretty lousy. And then you come to this week where it's NLG and it's do or die. And I mean, maybe it's not something that people want to hear or talk about, but when your captain basically no-shows the entire week and then just shows up and plays and disappears, I mean, what does that tell you about what does that tell you about that team's morale?
Yeah.
And
The
I'm not,
past 2 weeks, actually, not just
and
1 week.
I don't know what's going on, and I certainly don't want to dismiss that there could be the things going on in his life that are making him do that. But either way, like, those things happened right now, like in the middle of a doom season where your team isn't that good. Like, I'm not so sure, and I hope everything is fine. I'm not implying anything, but when you don't practice and you're not that invested, these are the results that you get, and it doesn't matter how talented you are. And competitive Doom CTF history is full of results like this, where you have stacked teams on paper that just never pan out. And the common denominator in almost all of them is that they never practiced. And as a result, they never gelled. And it can happen for a variety of different reasons. I'm not going to get into those reasons here, and I'm not going to try to speculate on other reasons. But those are the facts. So, I mean, I would my takeaway from it is it's a very big disappointment because you looked at this team on paper and you thought that this was probably the favorite to win the league, and yet here we are, they're in 5th place and going home before the postseason even starts.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely were one of the favorites to win, and playing against them in week 2 was really tough, especially around the end of round 2. They were really putting the pressure on us. But yeah, it just comes down to, I think, weak character. Yeah, that situation happened week 2. You know what? You have a decent 4th, pick yourself up, play week 3, and then proceed to week 4. And when you have your player back, and probably make the playoffs if they went through with it. But looks like someone just gave up, threw in the towel, and just wanted to be done with it. There's nothing else to say about that.
No, there's nothing you can say.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unfortunate. Not the first time, probably not the last time we'll see something like that happen, but, not to dwell on it. I mean, because of that, TWT took advantage of it, and they got themselves into the playoffs. And I mean, if you look at, the matchups for next week, which we'll jump into in a little later, they're really good matchups. Oh, wow, the first game's tomorrow. I think these games are going to be really exciting. So, I think it's better to have 4 teams that are completely engaged in a league versus someone just sort of, or, a team just sleepwalking in. So I think it's going to make the games better. That's all you can really say about it.
Yeah.
In week 4, we had really good games.
Great games.
Yeah. NLG versus VBM. So you guys thought if VBM had practiced a bit more, that they would have beaten NLG.
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%.
Tell me why.
So I'll just go ahead from my perspective as somebody that was watching the game live as a commentator. I watched them get run through the server in the first round because they didn't know what they were doing. They were taking routes where you could tell they didn't even know the map layout. As runners, as defenders, they didn't even like watching, and it looked like it was Ninja Dog on D. Watching him on D, he didn't even know where people could come in from. Round 2, they're kind of getting pushed around. They go down 2 early, but then they come back and they win, and you think to yourself, okay, they're kind of learning the map now. They're picking up speed. They have shown what they're capable of doing. Round 3 comes in, and then it's like, it's close, and then NLG just kind of puts it away. And my feeling throughout that entire match was, what if VBM just practiced? Like, watching it is like, what if they just knew what they were doing? Like, what if they just had a sound strategy? Like, this entire time, because I'm watching NLG, they know what they're doing. And I don't want to, and I don't want to make this conversation about what VBM didn't do. The conversation needs to be about what NLG did. NLG showed up and they were ready. And like I said, I could speculate all I want about whether or who I think wins or loses that matchup. But NLG was ready. And for VBM, this was a de facto playoff game. You had to win. Winning, you're in, you know. You would have seen the same team twice. If they would have won, they would have played NLG again. So, I mean, I don't get it. Like, you have to call it what it is when they don't show up and they don't practice. They gave up. They quit. There was no effort. What those reasons were, again, we're not getting into that. But from what I saw, from what I observed, when they had their spots, when they played well at times, they showed a higher gear than anything NLG showed me. But that's all well and good if you can only maintain that gear 20% of the time, when NLG is, you know, and maybe a gear below for 80% of the time. And then that other 80% of the time, your VBM, you're 2 or 3 gears below that. So, in other words, like, sure, your ceiling might be higher, but what good does it do if your floor is all the way to the core of the earth? You know, like, they just weren't consistent. And I think that if they would have practiced, they would have been. There's no reason for me to think they wouldn't have been. They had 3 championship players on their team: Ninja Dog, Langrenus, and Dranzer. And Skull Rush as a 4th who's won championships too. They have 4 capable players. And the craziest thing is the best that they looked in any game this season was a game that they lost in. So I just had my takeaway from it is that, again, underwhelming and lack of practice and lack of commitment. This is what you get. And I think they would have won because, like I said, I saw that high gear at times. And I think with more practice, they would have been in that high gear more often.
Well, let's just be clear on something. The team was around. The leadership wasn't. The captain wasn't. So it's.
But the team suffers regardless, and the performance suffers.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just wanted to clarify that because the team was around.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just giving like, and I think too, like at the same time, like don't let this negative energy that I'm spewing out take away from the fact that was a great game. Especially the third round. The third round felt like a championship round where both teams, the first 2 rounds, they were throwing haymakers at each other. And they were taking chances. They were playing fast and loose. But in the third game, you saw both teams tighten up. And we're just like, okay, let's slow down and not lose this game. And you saw some great plays from every player individually. Amar played great. Legion played great. Ross King was freaking playing D. Like, not that like he's not capable of it, but when would you ever think to yourself, a team that has Amar, Legion, and Ross King is the one on defense? And he was fantastic at it.
Well, it's his map.
So, well, still, it doesn't make a difference. Like,
he does what he wants.
Well, I know, but so I mean, I look at it like, yeah, sure, the storyline exists that, you know, Voldemort decided to not, you know, lead his team, but my perspective is it was still a great game, and you saw great players make great plays, and NLG just said, you know what, we'll go ahead and do you a favor and eliminate you now since you don't want to be here. And so it was. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, both the games that mattered, because let's just be honest, FU and ORB had 0 impact on standings. TWT and DMB and VABM and NLG were de facto playoff games for 2 teams. And VBM was winning, you're in. They lost. And TWT was win and hope VBM loses. And they took care of what they needed to. So it was almost as if we were in like this pseudo wild card round. And it just made the games more entertaining because you saw teams tighten up, and one team crumbled under the pressure. The other team rose above it. So it just kind of tells you what the difference like practice and leadership can make. And even still, with all of that, they were great games. So I'm beating the dead horse on this. So I'm just going to stop saying it. But like, I still think NLG was a great game. Props, shout out to NLG. They showed up. They took care of business. They're the second seed. They're going into the playoffs with a lot of momentum. And it's probably going to be them and FU in the finals.
Well, that wraps up, VBM season. But, like you said, props to NLG because I think all season they've really been prepared and, they could have faltered here and they still would have made the playoffs. And so that's really the best that you can do throughout the season is just make sure that if you do have any games where you might not play that great, that you'd end up making the playoffs regardless. So,
yeah. And quick point, Bones. I hate to interrupt you. Listen,
No.
players, watch what the fuck you say. Don't get suspended. Like, don't be that guy that does it to your team. Like, if you can't control your anger, little boy, like, if you can't do that, just disconnect, walk away, because that's another part. So just it's like, what do they say? Like, when you go onto Twitter, don't hit the send button, or say it in your head,
if
or
you're
like
on
have.
Ambien.
Well, that's true too. So, but yes, sorry, Bones. I just wanted to make that last point.
No, that's okay. So ORB and FU, like you said, had no bearing on the standings, but the thing about that is, look, ORB showed up and they played the game, and I don't know. I didn't see them practice. I wasn't paying attention to that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. Because even when you're faced in a situation, you're facing a situation where you're not going to make the playoffs, you should still, put in as much effort to win the game that you can as you can. So I thought that was really great that they did that. And, let me look at the scores here. I don't think that they were like completely blown out, and maybe you can, maybe they were. But maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Stel. The
Yeah,
first
sure.
round, it
Well,
seems like it was a little less close, but the second round maybe was closer.
no, the first round was the one that was 5-3, I think.
Oh, okay, got it.
And the second round was 5-1.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they somewhat showed up. I believe Shane had a little scheduling conflict. He showed up an hour late. We were forced to play without him, unfortunately. Nexus agreed to use Killer 007 instead of Shane. But yeah, Killer did a great job. He filled in pretty well without practicing with the team at all. However, I don't think the team practiced this week, unfortunately. But yeah, they still played really well. I mean, we didn't practice that much either because we knew. I think we practiced maybe once or twice, but we knew that ORB probably wasn't going to practice as much. But yeah, the first round, we didn't have any warm up. We were just waiting for OJ to get his internet fixed, like usual. They brought a lot of pressure on us in the first round because I guess they knew that it's one of those maps where you could catch someone off guard, like just caps very quickly. And yeah, that's what happened in the first round. And the second round, we kind of like settled in, got warmed up, and beat them 5-1. But yeah, that was a good game. I mean, I'm happy everyone showed up. Well, most people showed up, but yeah, it's good. It's fun.
They zombie ran a lot. That was kind of their issue all season.
Yeah.
I wonder too. I know ACC has a really odd schedule on top of being like on the West Coast. I almost wonder if that was a team that just never had schedules line up enough to practice consistently. Again, like, I'm not active in the community, so I don't know these things.
Well, all three of them actually, their schedules were very similar, but the problem was that they all got on super late at night. So
they probably couldn't
getting
find
people to practice,
play against.
yeah, it was hard for them.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because I mean, I look at a team like that, and like, again, ORB is another team that kind of blows me away that they ended up not making it, because it was like I think if I'm recalling correctly, when we had our draft analysis, like, my words on them was like, dude, they're the dark horse. Like, don't sleep on them. Like, Nexus, ACC, Seneca, Shane, like, nobody wants to see that lineup if they're well prepped. But it just never felt like they were. Watching them play all season, and I watched 2 of their games. especially against TWT in week 3 without Dastin, which, that'll be a conversation we'll have shortly. They were just, and a weapon like heavy weapon dudes, they were playing literally the only strategy that would allow TWT into that game. Like they played this ridiculous aggressive zombie run style of play that they're not good at. And maybe they're good at it when they're practiced, but when they're not, don't do it. Because, and I understand like what their mentality is in terms of applying pressure on the flag consistently, but if you can't do that, then what ends up happening is you just leave your defenders on islands and you get burned constantly. And that's what's happened with them all season. And I look at a team like that that's got players like ACC and Nexus, and I'm just like, no, just make games really annoying. Just play like Thai style of chasing mid and, squeak out flags, winning where you can, and beat people and grind them out. Like that's what that team looked like on paper to me. I understand that's not meta these days, but like you can still win that way. You don't have to send 50 guys at the flag at once. Other guys can be doing other things to establish and maintain map control, and it doesn't have to be done that way. So, I mean, yeah, like I guess looking at them this season, that's kind of the feeling I got from them. But I know the character of the players, and I don't have a question of the character of any of those players. I genuinely think circumstances for them must have been such that they weren't able to get quality practice, because otherwise I thought that was a team that if they got what they needed out of practice, nobody would want to see them. Like, I don't want to play against that team if I'm anybody on those other teams, because I'm just like, yeah, like, again, Seneca went for what, $1? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people understand how good Seneca is. But it doesn't matter if
arms.
So that's kind of all I got on that one. We talked more about a game that didn't matter than I wanted to.
Yeah,
true. So yeah, game didn't matter, but like I said, I'm happy that ORB at least showed up and put some effort in. So.
Shout out to them. That's true. We should shout out to them. They showed up. It just didn't work. Sometimes that happens. It just doesn't work out.
Been there. But to me, the game of the week was TWT and DMB. So, I mean, the maximum amount of flags that two teams could score in a 3-round game was scored in this match. Mm-hmm. They traded rounds 5-4, 5-4, 5-4, and TWT pulled it out at the end. Interestingly, as you mentioned, TWT played without Dastin. So, I think, I don't know. Why don't you tell me, hey, what do you think happened in this game?
So again, I was one that I called, and this was one of the craziest games I've ever witnessed. For anybody that didn't get a chance to watch this game, so where we go into round 3 and it's tied 1-up. In round 1, TWT was down by 2 flags, came back and won 5-4. Round 2, it was just back and forth, TWT won. In round 3, TWT was down 4-1 and came back and won 5-4. So, I mean, maybe if it's on another map that's not so crazy, and it could be that this map isn't even crazy, it's just new and people haven't figured out how to play it yet. I honestly think like maybe on any other controlled map, DMB probably 10-2, but again, like I don't want to make excuses for teams losing and then discredit teams that win. This is the second week in a row that TWT has had their back against the walls. It would be easy to count them out. No Dastin. And they pulled off, in my mind, what is a massive upset. And you have to look at the players on that team and give them credit. I mean, Tiger was phenomenal. But so is like Warrior and Vinny played really good games once again. And it wasn't just Tiger. And I'm starting to think that Warrior might have been a steal in this draft too, the way he's played the last few weeks. And Vinny is reliable. He's going to get you frags. He's going to do his best to communicate. He's going to show up in practice. He's not going to ditch you. He's not going to bail on you. So this is a team that has all the right stuff. I just wonder when they show up against a team that's just better, how that's going to hold up. And then the second, and probably the more important thing in this, what's the situation with Daston? Are they just playing these games without him because they have to get them played and he's not able to make them? Have they just, and throwing this out there, have they determined that it's just not working out with Daston and we're not going to play him? I can't imagine that that's the scenario, because that I don't see a world where if Daston's available to play, he doesn't play. Like, what is that situation? And now you go into the playoffs and you have a real question that this team is on a 2-game win streak with all the momentum in the world, toppling a very good DMB team, taking out ORB, and they did it without their best player. So it's a dilemma. Like, do you throw, a monkey wrench into the situation and insert Daston back in and potentially disrupt that momentum and rhythm? And I think most times I would say no, but in this case, because the player is Daston, you would be crazy not to. Like, you would have to find a way to insert Daston back in and say, we are going to make this work. So great game. Tiger was sensational. And again, a case where everybody played well. And then the flip side of this is now, and I want to get into this too, and then I'll let you speak, Style. This is the third week in a row where we've seen DMB play without Ed. But this is the first time DMB has played without Ed and lost. So is that conversation happening? Because again, if we're talking about a committed Ed, we're talking about one of the best players in the league. But we all know that the issue with Ed is commitment. So is that conversation going on where they're saying, hey, like, we didn't hit the gear that we needed to hit without Ed in this game, and this was a showcase of why we need him, because when we play against the teams that matter the most, Ed is our difference maker. I don't know if they believe that or not. And I'm not saying I believe that, because I think Saltmine is a really good player and continues to get better and better and better. But I'm not going to talk myself into a corner either on this one and somehow come out and make the case that Saltmine is better than Ed, because he's not. But if Saltmine is more reliable, it gives your team what's needed more, then you have to roll with what's better for the team. Because the highs and lows that Ed provides to a team more times than not have shown throughout history to be detrimental and not positive. So I don't blame Wiz for sticking with Saltmine, but again, you have to wonder, when you have that wild card in your pocket, do you pull it? Or do you just sit on it and say, it's not worth disrupting team chemistry to throw him in now, when obviously the game where we're going into the biggest game of the season against NLG?
So I'll add something to this game. I did watch it through the stream, but it's a little bit different than watching it from your own point of view or watching what you want to see. But to talk about TWT, they're playing as if everyone has microphones. They're communicating perfectly. They're so in sync, it doesn't make sense. So I think, the right move is to keep Daston away, because I don't know what they're doing, but it's working.
And maybe they're practicing. I mean, that's another thing.
Yeah, they're practicing. They're practicing. I know we practiced with them a lot on on week 3's map 68, and they took a few rounds off of us, quite a few times. I would dare to say that they probably beat us more than we beat them. I don't know what it is. They're just so in sync, and their chemistry is just beyond anything. It honestly just doesn't make sense. But yeah, keep Daston away. Play what you're playing. It's
Are you saying that because you don't want to play against Daston, though?
Hey, I'd love to beat Daston. I mean, I beat him week 1, so it felt good.
Yeah, and I think that's the dilemma. I mean, you're on one side of the fence, I'm on the other, but I mean, I would hate to this is something that every captain has had to manage this season. With maybe the exception of NLG because you knew who your starting 3 were. Every team has had a fourth that's good enough to start anywhere else. And FU, I think, has clearly been the best at managing that. Because not only have they had their fourth, because it's not even really clear who their fourth is. Like 1 week it's Denzoa, the next week it's Desperil, or so they swap guys in and out, interchange.
Set out week 1.
Like interchange, yeah, like it's been interchangeable. And honestly, I think it's the first time I've ever really seen it work. So we'll see. I mean, but yeah, I mean that's been an interesting thing. Like you've had this with every team. So this is a unique league with a lot of unique situations like this where you have stacked teams like that, and I just think it's cool to see it actually work. I think if we were in situations more where this happened more often, it would work because yeah, you would bring that guy in to be like, you know what, you work better in this map. So the style's the fourth, apparently.
I can use a real life example. There's been plenty of times over the years that this has happened, but the one that pops into my mind is I had drafted Dragon, Torvald, and Legion, and it was week 1, and Dragon and Legion have played together a ton of times, and so we practiced it, and it was fucking map 8, which is like, oh my god, Ralph starting seasons with map 8, just it drives me nuts. But Dragon, we practiced a couple times, and because it's map 8, I can't really decipher whether my team is good or bad because it's stupid fucking map. And Dragon was like, well, I don't want to play with Torvald, I want to play with Legion. And I was like, I just didn't want to deal with it, so I said fine. I thought we should play with Torvald, but I play Legion, and we lost in 2 rounds, and I said we're playing with Torvald next week and you're going to deal with it. And we did, and then we won that. We ended up winning that season, but like stuff like that, it can be hard to manage. But I think in like this situation with Daston, it's like, dude, you can't sit Daston. Yeah, regardless of how well you've done in the last,
unless he doesn't practice at all.
On because what map are they playing? What map are they playing?
Did they pick? But any map that Daston would be a specialty type player in, Tiger is going to be as well.
Are they playing?
I think they play. No, not map 14.
What's your map style?
Oh, we're playing map 68. Yeah, forgot.
What map is 68?
That's week 1.
I don't even remember that shit. Yeah, I do
Jake's
now.
new map.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, it's basically
we beat
a
them
rematch.
week 1, so
yeah, it's a rematch.
Got it.
What's their map?
Caribbean Catastrophe.
Oh, that's not a good map for them.
No.
Well, it's a good map for Tiger. I don't know about the other 2.
Yeah, but I don't know that I like Tiger in that map against your team.
Yeah, I would say if they were playing NLG, I'd be like, yeah, okay, no fucking question.
Yeah, like I could see Tiger outscoring them single-handedly, but
yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's a great matchup against FU.
I still think you put Daston in there. I don't care. Even if you don't have Daston run, which I know sounds crazy, but just have him frag people.
I know, but like if he's not even able to practice like with the team, then that like I get it as a captain. Like you're just like, look, if you can't practice with this, but these other 2 guys can, and like Warrior is having a great season, like I don't want to disrupt his momentum, and Vinny's giving me meaningful minutes. I don't want to take him out when these could be my guys for the games going forward. I would probably be making the same decision. I'd be saying, look, we got to get the guys that can be here to practice, because like this is where games are won and lost. And I'm with you, Bones, in that like I think Daston is one of the best players in the world, but like it only matters so much if he's not able to practice.
It's true.
It's it's a dilemma. In 90% of the time, like 95% of the time, it's you don't play the guy that doesn't practice. But we're talking about Daston. Fuck off, Cat.
Yeah, it's not. There's no easy decision. But to me, if Dastin is in that server during the game, sure, you want to start. You want to start with your lineup that you've practiced with all week. I would be okay with that. You get blown out, time to put Dastin in. Doesn't matter practice or not.
Yeah, but they're not even 5-round games either. So, like, do you really
True.
want to risk that when it's like you're
I guess
down
it depends how the
1-0 and
game
you get
plays.
like you're down 1-0 and you get like boat raced out of the server, and you really want to turn around and say, well, you know what, we lost in a map that we already lost in week 1. Let's just throw everything up in the air and try something new. Or do you stick with what's gotten you here the last 2 weeks? Because here's what we know: 0-2 with Dastin, 2-0 without him. I mean, at some point, like, you just have to go with what works. It's an odd, like, it's a very uniquely weird situation because, like I said, if this were any, like, with the exception of a few other players, if this were anybody else, I'd be like, sit the guy that's not fucking practicing. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's tough. It's going to be interesting. But before we jump into those games, unless I'm misremembering, Stal, I think there were a couple announcements you wanted to make during this radio that you mentioned the other day, unless I'm wrong.
I will be paid for my efforts, is his first announcement. For having to do radio last minute. Denzo was a great help. I will be paid for this.
Well, it wasn't really announcements. It's just some things that needed to be brought up, and I think we covered it.
Oh,
What
okay.
needed to be? Hold on,
Yeah.
no, hold on. I wasn't privy to this. I wasn't made privy. Tell me.
He said it in the chat.
Oh,
He said I have a couple announcements, and then I probably ignored his message. And
I did.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to remember what I said, what I meant. I know we covered one thing.
did you actually cover scoring after the round ends on radio last week?
we did talk
Oh.
about it.
Okay.
And Wiz did give us a statement on it.
Okay.
So in case anybody missed that, I guess I'll kind of go over it. Stal, if you want to tell them, you can, because I mean, you're part of the administration, so it might be better if you say it.
Well, I mean, we had a poll go out, and it was very even. Like, both sides were pretty much identical in the amount of people voting. So we just went with the decision that we thought felt right, and not having to overturn the scores, just letting whatever we see on the intermission, let it stand. And if it changes in the future with the next version of Zandronum, then we'll change our ruling as well. So, yep, we're just going to keep it the way it is.
Yeah, we had a pretty long discussion about that, Fabio and I, and I think both of us, I think, agreed that we think it shouldn't count. But
Sorry.
like, is Fabio calling? We both thought it shouldn't count, but like, the problem is how do you take away something that's hard coded in score now?
Yeah.
Do you really want to get into like? I get it. Like, I don't know that I'd ever want to be in a position as administration where I have to make a decision that could potentially result in taking a flag away, because that's water I don't want to get into.
I think that was really the deciding factor, is that we got to say, like, oh, no, well, actually the score was 3-2 instead of 3-3.
Yeah. And then, because then you would start getting into like just this ridiculousness of like people examining demos and everything and being like, look, this happened 0.43 seconds after the, like, and it's like, you just don't, like, I'll use a real world example. And unfortunately, our Canadian friends won't know this because they don't know what American football is. But I'm joking. The NFL and reviews are like a huge issue now, especially with like what is and isn't a reception. Like it like, reviewing is great because it gets the calls right. But then you get into situations where it's like you're splitting hairs on something, and like we lose track of the common sense element in the room, and we make a ruling that seems to go against what makes sense. And I think by getting into a situation as an administration, you allow that to potentially occur with the ruling where you could overturn a flag. Like if the server lets it happen, if the port lets it happen, just stick with it. And yes, it's a 10-minute rule, but now it lets players know play into that server switches to intermission. And give Tiger credit because he was the one who scored. That's exactly what he did. So I'm not crazy about it. I suspect most players aren't crazy about it because it's like, hey, the 10-minute mark should be absolute. But I mean, do you really like again, like the point I just made, do you really want to get into those murky waters? And I don't think you do. And I think a lot of players, to their credit, understand that. So yeah, I mean, until Zandronum decides to get rid of a lot of Karn code, like unfortunately, you're just going to be stuck with that. And I'm not sure how high of a priority that is for their administration to address. I mean, it's a long list of things to make changes to ports, and something like that. For all I, and I don't again, like I don't code, I don't develop, so I don't know. For all I know, something like that is like uberly complicated to change, and it's just like, well, you know, I could spend the next 6 months fixing this, or you guys could just shut the fuck up and learn to live with it, because it's not really like game changing or like game altering. It's just a weird kink that exists, that has always existed exclusively in this port, and you're just going to have to learn to live with it.
Unless we alter the time limit to 9 minutes and 58 seconds or 59 seconds.
But you still, but the principle doesn't change. You still have the exact same thing. It doesn't matter what you do to the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder too, and this would be a question for folks that map and that have extensive understanding of scripting. Is there such a WOD? Is there something that you could put in these WODs that when it hits 10 minutes, it stops the players in there? Like you could just do 0 action on the Doom guy that says Doom guy stops, no more moment, nothing. Because I mean, I know you could do that. There's ways, not necessarily in live online games, but you could do that for different like jump pads, for an example. Like you could script where he launches from, to, the momentum, the height, everything. So maybe that's an idea.
Maybe it's doable. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not the guy to ask. That is something I would reach out to Ross King for, or Rest King, because I know that they do a lot of scripting. So there's other guys too. I'm just not thinking of at the moment. So put that one out in the air, because maybe something like that exists, and that's a patch that you could have until that's addressed in the port.
Well, good. I'm glad that got settled. I don't, giving my opinion on it at this point doesn't matter. So, moving on to the semifinals. Speaking of, I think we talked a little bit about this already, but the first game is FU and TWT, which is happening tomorrow. So FU, of course, has home field advantage. It is a rematch of week 1 on map 68, and then that's FU's home field, so they're going to get, the first crack at winning this one on their home field. And then TWT has chosen map 13, Caribbean Catastrophe. So, I mean, obviously from like a replay standpoint, it looks better for FU. They picked a really good map, and they got, pretty lucky with the matchup. Now, TWT could look at it like, well, here's what we did in week 1, and we know we've analyzed why we lost, so we're going to do something different. So it could be like a double-edged sword. I kind of feel like it's not really going to matter, because FU has been pretty dominant all season. And to what you said earlier, Hate, like map 13 not being such a great map for TWT, I feel like that's not a great map for anybody. Like, I don't dislike the map, but what kind of specialty plays are capable on that map? Like a lot of players, you choose map 14 because you can do these rocket jumps, or you choose map 8 or whatever. There's maps where you can do some specialty things. It's a pretty straightforward map. It's got a pretty like old school layout, so I don't see anything like crazy happening on it. So I don't know. I just feel like it was an odd choice for that team, because I think TWT has some specialty players. They could have been better served playing a map that lended itself more towards what they can do. So I don't know, but I do think that FU has this one, and it was still it's not best of 5, it's still best of 3. So you said?
It's first to 3 wins.
First to 3 wins. Okay. Well, FU is going to be the first one to 3 wins in this game.
So does it? Okay, so it's not best of 5. It's just first to 3.
First to 3 wins.
Okay. Now, does it just alternate, or is it 2-2,
Yes.
1-1-1?
I think it's 2-2, 1-1-1.
2-2, 1-1. Wow. Okay.
The home fields will be played in the following order. Oh yeah. Okay, never mind. You're right. It's 2-2, 1-1-1.
That's weird. So your advantage is really only in the first 2 rounds. Then after that, it just goes to back and forth.
Yeah.
Ababab. Ababab.
Huh. Oh, well, they get 2 in a row too. Okay, never mind. Okay. Well, that's not different than what you typically see in best of 5s if they were to go on. So that's normal. But first to 3, that's different. That's because that's not the same thing as best of 5. That's first to 3.
Yep.
And no ties. There has to be.
You got to win.
So
It's got to be a definitive winner.
So let me ask.
Good luck scoring on Caribbean Catastrophe.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So like, say you guys go up 2-0 and then you just tie the next 18 rounds. It doesn't matter. You have to get 3.
You got to get 3 wins.
Oh man, I mean that's.
I mean, it won't happen where
about
you're
carpal
tying for
tunnel
like
doctor.
20 rounds.
But no, it's different. So I don't think it ultimately makes a difference. And looking at the rotation, and style, I was just getting clarification on the rotation order. I'll let you actually speak on the map since you'll be playing, and I don't know how much you want to actually talk about it, but
well, map 68, which is our home field, I don't know. I probably suspect I might be benched. I mean, I know my team did a lot better without me, but maybe that's because I was just a little rusty from playing at the beginning of the season or what. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what Poto decides. He's the captain. But yeah, Caribbean Catastrophe, I'm not too crazy about it. I remember like it was literally the first map I played after like my 5-year break, and I was lost. It's a very simple map, but visually I was just so lost because the entire base is brown. So I couldn't distinguish what stairs go where or what was going on, and I just disliked the map since then. But as far as like the results go on this week, it's gonna be a good game. I'm not gonna say it, but yeah, it's gonna be a good game.
well, I don't think it's going to really be a good game. I kind of think luck runs out for TWT here. I know I said everything I said about keeping momentum and whatnot, but in situations where talent equates to roughly being the same on both teams, practice and strategy matters. In situations where 2 teams are facing each other and there's clearly a disparity between talent, then 2 things need to happen for that team that has lesser talent to win. Number 1, the more talented team has to play bad. And number 2, the team that's less talented needs to have great prep work, needs to basically play an ace game every time that they win. So for me, do I see any of those things happening? Well, I think TWT is going to practice and get solid practice, and they've been doing it now for
well, I mean, the game is tomorrow, so I don't know if they've practiced at all yet.
Oh, well, that's true. Well, throw that out the window. So either way, I don't see FU having a bad game in either of those maps. And even if they do, I don't see them doing it consistently where they don't get to 3 first. I give TWT a lot of credit getting here, but I think luck runs out here. I think FU probably just 3-0s this. I don't envision it being particularly close. I mean, scores might be close here. You might have a round that's a 5-3, 5-4, something like that. And maybe the overall tenor of the mat, or is like that 5-2, 5-3 in every round, where it's like close but no cigar. But like FU was never really in danger of losing, and I think you're going to see something like that.
All right. Well, I do think that the most interesting game this week is going to be the next one, which is NLG and DMB. I can't count how many times I've actually had to play Ross King on map 14 in the playoffs. It's been like 3 or 4 times, and every time I try a different strategy, and every time I lose worse than the last, and I don't understand. I swear I'm learning things. I mean, unless I'm just that bad at this game now, but it's really hard to play against him on this map, and it's just one of those maps that he completely controls. I mean, which totally makes sense. But I do like the lineups. I am super interested to see if Ed plays, but if he doesn't, like I feel pretty confident in Salt Mine. In Vengeance last year, I used Salt Mine in the playoff game when I wasn't planning to do that, and he bailed us out of losing, a couple rounds that we would have lost. So I have a lot of faith in him, and then of course, this is kind of like an all-star game. I do think that NLG is going to get off to a fast start on map 14. Excuse me, and maybe DMB picks up on some stuff and learns it. But then you go to like map 36. I think this map actually also favors NLG, and I say that because not because Ross King made both maps, even though it is baloney, though you chose his map, Xwiz. So I think just the way that these teams are set up and the way that these maps, like the way that you get the flags on these maps, a lot of them are, I mean, they're both, you drop down and you grab the flag and you're kind of like split second, you're out like that. The idea is not to, like, you don't really barge yourself into the base, I don't think, on these maps. You just kind of, you end up on the flag and then you try to, bolt out. And I think that kind of gameplay, where there's also the ability to rocket jump, really favors a Ross King led team. And then the way that Ross King and Legion have been working together this season has been really fun to watch. So, I mean, I just think that I think it's going to be a really good game. I think I wouldn't say that I would be totally, completely shocked if DMB won, because I think they can do it. But I think it's more of an uphill battle for them than it will be for NLG. So if I had to predict something, I would say NLG's. I think it's going to go like 5 or 6 rounds, and NLG will win. But like I said, I would not be totally surprised if DNB figures something out and pulls this one out.
Kyle, you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I want DNB to be competitive in these rounds, but I just think NLG is going to have the edge on both maps. It's just simply because you look at NLG's offense. They have Caboose. You look at DNB's offense. Was it Infer? Is it Wiz? Not too sure. So they have like a clear-cut runner. That's Caboose or Ross King. And on defense, same thing. DNB is kind of like more this. They're not too sure where they're going to play each week. Even though we did see Caboose play defense last week. I don't know if that's because he just wanted to make a statement that he could do anything he wants.
You thought?
Or you thought. But yeah, I think DNB can maybe squeeze out a win, a tie, but ultimately I don't think they have what it takes to beat Amar and Caboose on either of these maps. If DNB picked maybe a more fraggy map, maybe that would have worked in their favor.
You don't think Wanderlost is fraggy?
It can be. It can be. It depends how you play it.
Okay, I'll let you talk. It's your turn.
Depends how you play it. Like, I mean, the runner could really, the runner could bolt out pretty quick, or he could take his time. and wait for his team to push up to mid and take control of that.
Did you see what I saw?
What?
Are you laughing at what I'm laughing at?
No, I'm not laughing at what you're laughing
I
at.
don't want to give him, like, I don't want to dignify him, but I'm laughing at him.
But yeah, I just don't see NLG losing 3 rounds to DNB, unfortunately.
So I think I agree with you, Style. I just look at NLG and I say, what does DNB do that NLG doesn't do better? I mean, I just don't see it. I think this is a game where you need Ed, and you need committed Ed, and Ed playing well. But you haven't had it all season, and I don't think you're going to get it now. I will say, if I'm looking at NLG and DMB, I give DMB a much better chance to beat NLG than what I'd give TWT to beat FU. I guess my biggest issue maybe isn't even necessarily with like who's going to defend, because I think I know who's going to defend for DMB. It's going to be Salt Mine, but I just don't like if you're asking me to put money on a Salt Mine led defense to stop a Ross King led offense, I'm going to choose Ross King 10 out of 10 times. So I guess where I'm at with this is the only scenario where I see DMB winning is if Salt Mine plays the game of his life. And look, like, I mean, the guy has been just on a steady increase each season of improvement. Like, he gets better every season. Every league that we play, like, he reminds me more and more of like a total complete package player. But it's just not coming together now. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. And I anticipate that DMB will probably fall in 4. I think if they could stretch it to 5, that would look really good for them. But I just don't. That the firepower. I mean, Stal made this point. The firepower just isn't there, and I don't see them slowing NLG down enough to grind them out. And again, like, you have to at least get one map on Mephitic Waste. You have to. I don't see it. Like, I just don't see it.
I think the only way it could actually happen for DNB is if we get 2020 Ed in that server at that time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's like, the only way it's going to happen.
If you put that Ed in there, I think they would grind NLG into a pulp. They would just frag them to death and beat them like 2-0 every round. But that's not their. But that's also not their game. That's not the way that they play. So even if you got that, like, I'm not sure it'd be effective for them, because like they haven't practiced or played that way all season. So I don't know. Like, I think Wiz has an extraordinary amount of confidence in Salt Mine. And I think if I'm the captain, if I'm Wiz, I'm telling Salt, it's like, look, baby, you got to win this for us. It's all on you. I mean, I'll give you this example. Many years ago, back when we were still young and had less gray hairs.
Or hair at all.
That too.
I don't know what my natural hair color is right now.
We played Ralph's team in the playoffs, and it was when I was first or second year I was captaining EBL, but it's a season that I had Higgs. It was me, Russ King, and Higgs. Anybody looking back, you don't know who Higgs is, I don't blame you. Because he's not a prominent Doom 2 player. He is a prominent Quake player, but not a prominent Doom 2 player. At that time, we were seeing kind of like a flirtation with the Quake community, kind of coming over to the Doom community. We saw a lot of players come over and have a lot of success around that time, and Higgs was one of them. But Higgs was still new to Doom. And if you watched Higgs look like he was if you watched Higgs run, you'd say it looks like he's on drugs, and it's because he was. And in all seriousness, when we got into the playoffs, we grinded teams out. We were never going to beat teams 5-0. That wasn't our game. We didn't have the offensive firepower to do it. We took the number 1 seed into 5 rounds, 6 rounds. I don't remember. We went into multiple overtimes. And it was the conversation I had with Higgs. It was like, if we're going to win, it's because you have a great game. Because you have the best game you will ever have. Because Russ and I can keep this flag in the base and never let them score. But you can't beat somebody 0-0. You have to get points. And it doesn't matter how good we are defensively. It doesn't matter how well we rotate up. It doesn't matter any strategy that we do. You have to play well in your role and excel. And it has to be the best you've ever done. Because the other pieces just aren't enough. Rust and I was a great player. I was the best player in that server. I mean, in reality. But they had a better overall team. And they had more talent overall. It doesn't matter. Like, and that's how I look at this. Like, I think Ross King is probably the best player. But then I look at Wiz, and then I look at Infer, and that's the next best 2 players. And I know everybody's in love with Amar. He's great. He's a good fragger, good player. I think very highly of him. But he's not playing every season and every port like these other guys are that have a lot of chemistry and gelled with each other the way they have. And then Legion's a good player too. But like, there's still a disparity in talent. And LG is better. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you're probably your least talented player in a very crucial role has to play with their hair on fire. So that's, long-winded story, rant, whatever. But that's the point that I'm making. You have to have that type of game from him. We got that game from Higgs. We were this close. We were that close. And even then it wasn't enough. So I am like, I'm rooting for that to happen, by the way, because I want to see young players do that shit. But it's very hard because you're competing against people who have been doing this since that young player was in their mother's belly. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I want to see DMB win. They're just not gonna. Like, it's just not gonna happen. Sorry, Wiz. Get better.
Yeah, I drafted Higgs one time. Dev said, "Oh, you should really draft him. He could be a great third for us." So I drafted him. I spent, I don't know, the rest of my money. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I can be around from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m."
Yeah, he had a weird schedule.
And I was like, "Are you fucking kid?"
And he would never practice, by the way.
Nope,
Like, that was
never practiced. Never sat foot in a server with my team, and I was just fucked. But
he would literally
I'm glad that you had that experience with him.
Hey, listen,
I'm really happy for you.
We're gonna have fun because I'm gonna tell some stories. He would literally, like, Rest and I would sit there because this is back in the days when everybody was on Ventrilo. He would literally be on Ventrilo, like, dude, I'm like going through withdrawals right now. And we're just sitting here, like, in the middle of a game, he's saying this. And we're like, are you fucking serious? It's like, dude, like, I'm really high right now. Like, I'm kind of tripping. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is happening? like this guy is like wigging out in the middle of a game. And like, and he would say things like, I can't play this game, it melts my eyes. Then why did you come here? Like, I like him. He's a cool guy, but like, he would just like in the middle of a game, he'd be like, wait, we're not doing this? How come it doesn't work that way? It's like, because it doesn't. Shut up and play. Like, yeah, well, he was a handful. He was funny. He was high all the time.
Yeah.
So it was worth it. But
drafting him led to another fun situation with Dev where our fourth was Shadow Ghost, right? who had been long gone since that point, but I probably messaged him on Facebook or something and was like, sign up. And so I drafted him, and he was playing on the fucking moon or something. So his internet was shit. And then we picked up Myonic Donut, and I like Myonic Donut.
But he sucks.
Not skill. We were playing map 8, and he had a meltdown during the game. He was screaming, high-pitched screaming, like, why did you pick me? Why am I playing in this game? What the fuck? And Dev and I are just like, we didn't even know what to say. I think we just stopped. We couldn't concentrate on anything. So thanks, Higgs. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you, Higgs. So it looks like our finals prediction, FU versus NLG.
Yeah, I hope I'm proven wrong on it, but yeah, I just want to see the young guys step up, man. That's all I care about. I would love.
I think they have. Honestly.
I would love to see TWT beat the shit out of FU. I love everybody on FU. That would be fantastic for the Doom community if that happened, but it's just not going to happen.
I think the way they've been playing, they have stepped up. Like Tiger, Vinny, and
I know, but I want to see them take that next step. Like
they already took enough steps.
Are they making you nervous?
Oh,
Look like they make you nervous. You. That's too close.
I'll tell you what is going to happen though. I'm going to ask you if you can choose an MVP for week 4.
I got my MVP for the season. I can pick.
Damn it. An MVP for week 4 and an MVP for the season. So why don't you go ahead, because you're so eager to tell us.
I said it on stream. It's Tiger. Prove me wrong. It's Tiger. I'm like, what he's been the last 2 weeks for his team is sensational. I mean, and he was good in the first 2 weeks that they lost. But Tiger was week 4 MVP, and I'm just trying to help. You're the one that's like, my throat, I can't talk. I'm just trying to help you out.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So it's Tiger.
I'm actually going to give it to Warrior. I have a soft spot for defensive players. I think he held it down.
Bias.
I think he honestly held it down.
He was great.
And he played a great game.
We're talking about week 4 or season.
That was week 4.
Okay. Week 4, I think I would agree with Tiger. Because, I mean, to go from 0-2 to 2-2 and to make that comeback.
Yeah, he was sensational in week 3, too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just week 4.
Yeah. So, are you choosing Tiger for your regular season MVP as well, or do you have somebody else?
I already answered that question. Style, who do you got?
For the season. When I think of MVP, I think of like, if this player wasn't on this team probably wouldn't have the same success. And I have to go with Poto.
I knew it.
Got to go with Poto.
I knew it.
This guy pulls off. I don't care. Well, to be honest, it was between Poto or Cab. And I didn't want to give it to Cab because I didn't want him to be all fucking, with his chest puffed up. But
he's got a Mar and Legion. It's not like NLG sucks.
No,
like
but without
proven players,
NLG without Caboose probably don't.
Okay, but they're not going to have. Okay, but they're not going to have like a wheelchair as their third player either. If they didn't spend the money on Caboose, they would have had the money to get another like super good player. They would have still been a good team. Yes, you're right.
By the way, they didn't spend that much money on him.
Wasn't it like $20?
That's not a lot of money.
24.
I mean, that's still like a really good player.
No, I know.
Like, I'm with you. Like, I get it. Like, you can make, like, it's the LeBron James effect or the Michael Jordan effect. The reality is he's probably the MVP every season. But, like, you have to look at every other team and look at, like, what they're doing with what they have. I look at Poto, and I get to pick from having Denzoa, Stal, or Disparel on my team, like, yeah, easiest game of my life. I'm not taking anything away from Poto, but when I think of MVP, like I'm using your words and your logic, and I'm saying, what would this team be without you? And as good as Warrior is, and I think he has stepped up and been magnificent this season, as reliable as Vinny is, and I think highly of Vinny as a player too. You take Tiger off of that team and they're 0-4, and they don't sniff even taking a round off of anybody. And you could put maybe
Well, if they
Daston
don't
in
have
there.
Tiger, there's Daston in there, right?
Okay, but they went 0-2 with Daston and Tiger in there. So,
well, maybe because they're kind of like stepping on each other's toes, right?
Yeah,
kinda
like
how
maybe
you
it's
and
not
Wiz
working.
In Vengeance, we're stepping on each other's toes.
Well, but that's different. Like, we were also coming back from like not having played in a long time.
Yeah, I know, but that was kind of funny to witness.
And like Wiz like has like the weirdest, like he SR50 is the weirdest way. Like his Doom character looks like it never changes like the angle that he's facing. He's like sidestepping SR50. I'm like, this looks just so awkward. But he gets it done. Wiz is my boy. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, even if you put Daston in Tiger's situation, that team is having the success they're having. Like, really, like that's how good. Like, I cannot stress enough how well I thought of like Tiger played in week 3 and week 4. I don't even think like a high level Daston gets them there. Like, I think Daston, even playing with those two, playing his best game, probably loses one of those games, and then they're out. So, you know, that's where I am with it. But Poto was very. I want to be clear. Poto was awesome too. I watched Poto play. I watched a lot of your guys' demos. I mean, Poto is ridiculous. I mean, what can't the guy do? But yeah, I want to give some love to a guy that was on a team that I feel like carried his team, and I just don't think it's fair to say Poto carried your team.
I'm gonna have to go with Shane. I really enjoyed his map commentary.
Are we live?
And yeah. Let me see.
Oh man.
It's hard because I think when you you want to go and like highlight a lesser
Welcome
somebody
to the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, you want to highlight somebody like Tiger, which I get. Can I pick, like, if I wanted to highlight somebody that did the most for their team, I think it would be Tiger. If I wanted to pick somebody that played the best out of all the players this season, it's probably Ross King. So what do you value more? Probably the player that carried their team.
Yeah, I mean, most valuable. And when I hear most valuable, I think like what you meant to you were that valuable.
Yes.
Like I said, like Ross King is probably the best player every season and the MVP every season. And sometimes Ross King is on a team where he needs to be not only the best player in the league, but the best player by far. But that's not the case this season because he's on a really talented team.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not a slight at Ross King at all. It's us saying like Tiger was that insane, and let's give credit where credit is due. I will say that Tiger has had this shout out before in the past in other leagues, and he kind of flopped in the playoffs. So this is all well and good, but like you got to start winning. Tiger's teams have not done well in the playoffs either. Like, eventually, like, you're gonna have to start winning when it matters. Like, it's great that you do this in the regular season, but I mean, have any of his teams won anything yet? I'm not counting Zach in leagues, by the way.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
We don't speak that name out loud.
Oh, ugh.
I don't think
smile
so.
like that, style. Don't smile like that. Like, for real. Like, we know Zach is just at home. Hey guys. Hey.
Hosting streams to 0 viewers. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so I mean that wraps up the regular season. We got the first game tomorrow, and the second game we don't know yet.
Yeah, it sucks. I won't be able to be there. What time is it tomorrow?
Who the fuck else is going to be there?
4:30.
I mean, Jesus
Christ.
So
Zen isn't even going to be there to catch it.
I wouldn't even be awake.
What, at 1:30? What time do you work?
Okay, I was come on, man. I'll be
What?
awake. I just want.
Well, I don't know. Like if you work during the evening, it's not inconceivable that
usually-
maybe
I'm
around
usually up.
1 o'clock you're waking up.
I wake up at like 6.
Oh, because I thought you worked in the morning.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about before we sign off for the week?
I'm coming out to Las Vegas in October, so whoever is trying to meet up with me, don't. I'm just playing. That was rude.
Are you actually going to Las Vegas in October?
There's some like there are bands that my wife listened to. I think like My Chemical Romance and a few others are out there.
Oh, that emo fest thing.
Is that what it is? Do you know what it is?
Those, yeah, it's
at the end of October. That's all I know.
Yeah, EDC, not EDC, but yeah, I know it. I know what it is.
Well, you're in Cal. You're not super close to Las Vegas, but
I drove there before. It's like 8 hours. It's not bad.
I mean, 8 hours sucks. Like I drove to Toronto a couple years ago. Like that was 4 hours. And I was like, it's fucking lame.
That's not so bad.
It's fun when you.
Six.
It's fun if you drive with other people. It's lame when you're by yourself.
I think 4 hours is doable.
4
By
hours
yourself.
isn't bad, but by yourself still stinks. Like,
Yeah.
especially like in Canada, where there's between Toronto and where I live, there's not a lot of stuff. Like, especially once you get like outside of like Windsor, there's nothing between Windsor and Toronto. Just like windmills everywhere, which is kind of cool. Love the green energy, but I think I saw Justin Trudeau twice too. Just sitting there with blackface on.
Well, this has been Redemption Radio. If our account's working next week, you'll see us probably around the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like this earlier start time, 9 o'clock or 8:30.
Yes, please. Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's because of me, because I have to walk home from work, but
Okay.
I can make it work.
Works for me.
Good
All
for
right.
me.
See you, Justin Trudeau fans, later.